Does it ever feel to you that the best berries are either really high up or hidden behind some thorny branches? Well, I'm going to share my best tips today how you can pick more berries faster. If you're new here, my name is Anya and I'm here at our Gabled home. Well, actually I'm outside. Usually I share more urban homesteading skills and techniques, but today I'm going to take you foraging in our neighborhood for blackberries. Tip number one, very gently step on some bottom branches so that you can get closer into the bush and pick the berries there. You want to do it gently and not actually break the branches so they also won't get the thorns onto your legs and ankles. Tip number two, you can very gently take one of these branches, these long ones, thorny ones that are in the way, and with their thorns, hook them somewhere else. So they're out of the way and you can get into the bush and start picking blackberries. I'm going to do that again with this one. Just gently move it out of the way. It can always grow back. There's strong winds, it's probably just going to come back anyways. Tip number three, even though this is a reasonably warm summer day, I am wearing a fleece because even when the fleece gets hooked into the thorns, you don't get big snags or tears or any like ripped fabric that you would get with cotton. So this protects my arms somewhat well, and I feel a little bit better about moving in here, getting closer into the bush, reaching for the berries that are further in there without getting too many scratches on my arms. Tip number four, use a basket or something that you don't have to carry in one hand. I can just wrap this around my arm and I can use two hands to pick the berries. You can also have something hanging from your neck or have something hanging from a belt, but you do want your hands free so that you can hold branches while you're picking with your other hand, or you can collect berries into one hand as you're going and then gently drop them into your basket. Tip number five, bring a cane. My grandparents always used their walking cane for when they were picking elderberries, or bring a, what do you call this, a garden hoe, to bring certain branches closer and see how I'm holding it with one hand and picking with the other, and I have the basket hooked onto my arm so I can really go and pick a lot of berries. Here's tip number six. I often start picking berries from one side of the bush, and as I go, I feel like I've picked all the berries, but then when I come back and I have a different angle, I see berries that I didn't see from this angle. So I recommend that you start going this way and that way, and sometimes you can even do that twice over, because every time you will see berries that you missed from one angle or that you missed the time before that you actually went. On to tip number seven. It's always worth looking underneath some leaves. And why? Because first of all, people don't tend to see the blackberries there. I'm getting snagged here. And secondly, the birds don't see those berries either. So looking underneath, you can find a lot of berries right here. So I always like to look underneath some leaves, bend my knees, crouch down, see what I find underneath. tip number 8, and I don't even know if it's really a tip, but it's just something to know when are the berries ripe. When you gently pull on them with 3 or 4 fingers and the bush releases the berries, they're ripe. Sometimes when they're not ripe, you pull, and you pull, and that's a good indicator that they're not quite ripe yet and you don't want to pick them. If they come off with just the slightest and you get a lot of staining on your fingers, that one goes whoops, straight in the mouth, because those don't travel very well. They get mushy, they spoil really easily, and they don't necessarily make it home for you to make yummy things with them. And my last recommendation, even though sometimes it can be tempting when you find blackberries, and I know these aren't quite ripe yet, but when you find them down here, I would leave them alone, because on this popular path here, dogs pee on them, and I don't know if you want to eat those. And even if you go into the wilderness somewhere where there's nobody around, you still might have foxes or other critters walking by peeing on things. So even when it's really tempting, I tend to leave those alone and focus on the ones up here. So I don't know about you, but sometimes I do get a little bit greedy, and I do end up with these little scratches on my arm, and there's nothing I can do about it. But that's okay, because I have more than 2 gallons, maybe closer to 3 gallons of blackberries that I will either make into a jam or into a crumb cake, and the recipe is right here. See you in the next video. Tip number 4. Is it number 4? Oh, good puppy. Tip number 6. Oh gosh, I'm losing it.